Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's very exciting to be sharing with you the magic of the Philippines that has recently opened and has remained open. So that's a major achievement. It's the first country in Southeast Asia to be open. We opened on February 10th. Nothing dramatic has happened. Everything is quite normal. The way entry works is pretty fast, and I'll touch upon that in the question and answers phase. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity. We are very excited that the time has come that we can actually be talking about relevant things, which is when you can come to the Philippines and what you can see there. If you have any questions, I think you can put them in the chat box, and then at the end I can answer them. I will try not to speak too fast, although I know all of the people in Switzerland have amazing English, but I do tend to get a little bit excited and speak too fast, so I'll try to pace myself. Do know that I can't see you guys because of the screen sharing, so I am imagining everybody has a big smile on their face and everybody's super happy, and thank you for that. So I wanted to take you on a bit of a journey to the Philippines, a country that I first discovered 12 years ago when I got there without knowing it at all, to go be a dive guide in Panglao in Bohol. I came after 2.5 years, or 2 years in the Caribbean. So I was in Honduras and Dominican Republic and a little bit of Mexico. And when I came to Asia, I never went back to anywhere else. Just the diversity and the colors and the fish and the life was, and still does, astound me. And it is really a magical country. And when you look at some of the facts that have nothing to do with diving, the fact that it's a very safe country, everybody speaks English, and the Filipinos are like the nicest people on the planet. All of that together, along with the biodiversity of the diving, makes it a very desired destination for us divers. So if you look at this map, this is a map of the Philippines, actually north to south. We're a pretty big country. We're looking at around 2,000 kilometers from the tip of Luzon to the south of Mindanao, approximately. There's over 7,600 islands. And if you put all the land together, you're in about the size of Italy. So it's quite a big landmass. We have 3 very large bodies of water around us. On the east side, we've got the Pacific Ocean, where the next land is Central America. On the west side, we have the West Philippine Sea, or the South China Sea, depending who you ask. And on the south, we have the small Sulu Sea that it opens up to Indonesia and Malaysia, and the Celebes Sea. So large bodies of water that basically water funnels through the islands, and we are sitting in the heart of the Coral Triangle. So what is the Coral Triangle? It's a very big imaginary triangle that covers 6 aquatic nations. Philippines is one of them. And what makes it so special is that it's home to over 65% of the reef building coral species in the world and 75% of the species of fish. So that means every time you put your head in the water, you're likely to see more things than you would anywhere else in the world. And that's just a fact about the Coral Triangle. And of course, it's not only all those numbers, but it's also a habitat for feeding, breeding, and migration zone for large animals like tuna, species of dolphins, whale sharks, dugongs, whales, and whatnot. So it just attracts into it a lot of the migratory species, as well as what we call the non-migratory species. Another really important point to make is that we're sitting about 6 degrees off the equator. So we're very, very close to the equator. And we sit in the meeting point of 2 major oceanic currents, the North Equatorial Current and the North Pacific Current. And they meet and they funnel through the islands. And water rich in nutrients settles on the walls and on the sandy slopes that are on the sides of the islands on each side. So that's what makes this area super unique when it comes to the richness in the water. More than anything, the Philippines is characterized by very, 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 and I mean very vivid reefs. So colors, 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 soft corals, large, hard corals, big corals, everything is big and everything is very healthy. And it's very encouraging to see, especially as we know destinations like the Red Sea, where some of the corals have been damaged, Maldives, which has turned a bit grayish in the past 20 years, the Great Barrier Reef, unfortunately, with a lot of the coral bleaching there. We rarely see that in the Philippines. We have very rich marine life because of all the facts that I've just mentioned, like being, sitting on major equatorial currents and just water funneling through the islands in the apex of the Coral Triangle. And it is a macro haven. So it is a very specific place to go and see macro life. We also have a thing called muck diving or critter diving, which basically means that we are looking for very, very small things in the sand. Or in some small structures. So it is not your regular beautiful reef setting where you look at small stuff, but muck diving means you're looking at very, very small things and specific to fish behavior, just like here, the jawfish with the babies in the mouth. We have 7 different species of frogfish in the Philippines. 5 different species of octopus, including the mimic octopus, the matoti, the blue ring, which is on almost everybody's wish list, and of course this cute coconut octopus. And we have different kinds of diving in the Philippines, obviously, like many other places. One of the really unique things that started picking up in the Philippines is what we call blackwater diving, which is basically a way for us to experience the deep life of juvenile and larval phase fish. So what we do is on a night dive, we would take a boat out before the divers go out, and we put down a rope with very strong lights. And what we do is wait for about 20 minutes. What happens is during the day, the larval phases and the small juvenile fish, they would hide in the deep. And they come up to feed on plankton to the light of the moon, by and large, only at night when there's not that many predators around and they can't be noticed. Because anyway, we're talking pretty small critters here, right? Like about 1 centimeter at most. And so with blackwater diving, what happens is we attract all of those using the lights, and then we're able to see very interesting larval and juvenile phases like this baby octopus. And of course, we talked a lot about small guys, but we have a lot of big guys in the Philippines. Remember, it is a migratory path. So we get our thresher sharks in Malapascua, and they also pass through Puerto Galere at times. We get our whale sharks, especially in Oslob, Tubataha, Donsol, Southern Leyte, and kind of all the Visayas area. And of course, our friend from Busuanga Island. And you could get pretty close encounters with them, which is really, really cool. Because mostly when you see a dugong, if some of you have seen like in Palau or in the Red Sea, you would know that they're there, but it's very rare to see because they tend to be very shy. However, they have not been chased down in the Philippines. So they're really not afraid of humans, and that's pretty cool. And we've got all of our reefy sharks. So your gray reefs, your black tips, white tips, and of course, mantas and various rays like marble rays, eagle rays. And all of that is underwater, where there's so much more to see above water, because Philippines has some of the world's most pristine and beautiful beaches. The nature is just astounding also above water. So we definitely encourage people to also lift their head above water and experience waterfalls and crater lakes and hot springs and pristine beaches. One of the things that we wanted to touch upon is basically how can you get into the Philippines? So all it includes right now and since February 10th, it's pretty simple. Any country, which includes Switzerland and actually most of Europe, that does not need to apply for a visa to get into the Philippines can just go. You have to be fully vaccinated, which means 2 jabs, not 3, not 4. But 2 jabs, and you need to do a PCR test 48 hours before departure, which is pretty standard. And you need to do a medical insurance that covers you for COVID as well as other diseases, up to $35,000 or the equivalent of 35,000 Swiss francs, which for those of you who travel and do that, you know that that is very, very low. When I travel, my policy is up to like 5 million or whatnot. So that is all the requirements as they stand. They've been standing since February 10th. It's pretty easy to come in. 3 days before you arrive, you need to fill in this form. And in the form, you actually upload your vaccination card and stuff. So when you arrive, it's already there in the cloud in a way. I haven't heard of anyone who's been turned down or turned around. We have guests that are visiting us now, the resorts, and everybody's reporting that the entry is pretty simple. So that was on the fork of a bit on the fork or on the tip of the fin about the Philippines. And I want to tell you about Atlantis, which is the place that I've been working for almost 6 years, where we are and what we do. So we are dedicated dive resorts. We have 2 dive resorts in the Liveaboard. Everything is about diving. It's dive, 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 dive. We offer up to 5 guided boat dives a day, all facilities, the resorts and the Liveaboard. And we pride, and I always tell people that my job ends when people come to the resort, because 45% of our guests are repeaters. And that says a lot about the business. So it's all about the 5-star service that people experience, not necessarily in a luxurious way, but more in anything that you need to enjoy your dive vacation. So as I mentioned, we do 5 guided boat dives per day. 5. Yes, it sounds like a lot of diving. But the cool thing is we don't do those on bunker boats. By and large, we do them on small speedboats. So we have a schedule like 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m., and 6 p.m. And if you want to dive, you show up. You don't want to dive, you don't show up. So it's pretty simple. It gives people the opportunity to do the most diving as they would, can. And everything is with a boat and a guide. So that really helps to be able to see all these incredible species in the Philippines. And you don't have to decide in the morning how many dives you're going to do. And you're going to have to spend the whole day on the boat. And it's like, no. You can come back to the resort after each dive to your spacious accommodation with everything that you need, from biodegradable toiletries to free drinking water and hair dryer. And of course, the cuisine is definitely not something to miss out. It is pretty exquisite. We do everything in-house. We have a pastry chef, we have bakers, everything is done in-house. We can cater to any dietary requirements. And we do believe that although the army marches on its stomach, the divers are entitled to fin kick on their stomachs. And we have dedicated camera rooms in the resort. So basically every time you come back after each of the dives that you're doing, you can utilize the camera rooms. We are very specific with photographers, and we do a lot of photography workshops. And one of the things that makes me very, very proud to be part of an organization like Atlantis is what we do and don't really advertise about with regards to the local community and just the belief of how the company operates. When I shared this information with Claudia and the team at VDive, they said, oh, wow, when you make the presentation, you should definitely tell people about it. Because I believe today people have the choice of where they can go and spend their time off, but also where they can spend their money. And I know that for me as a consumer, I have my choices in basically everything that I buy, and I can choose to support businesses that align with my values. So I have to say, for me on a personal level, I find what Atlantis is doing incredible, and I'm very proud to be part of it. Mostly we're talking about building local capacity and protecting what you love. And what do those slogans mean? Capacity means our staff. We are a company of 150 staff between the 2 resorts and the Liveaboard, and we are 6 foreigners, including our 2 owners. Really, the idea is to be able to create long-lasting and high-paying jobs for the local communities in which we operate. So a lot of other resorts and a lot of other dive centers, and I've seen this and I've worked in many like that, right? You'd have the locals would be your tank boys or your boat boys, and then the instructors are always foreigners coming and taking all the glory, sitting down for drinks with the guests and making all the big tips. The idea is not to do any of that at Atlantis. Everybody at Atlantis is homegrown. All of our, by and large, I think about 90% of our staff between the 2 resorts are actually homegrown in the resort. So people who started as boat boys or as wait staff or as drivers and went all the way up to dive master and instructor because that is the path that they wanted to do. Every person who works at Atlantis for at least a year is entitled to get a free open water course, which is an amazing opportunity, especially for Filipinos. If you've been around there, you guys would know they're afraid of the water. So it is, it's a great, rewarding activity to be able to do something that changes the life, right? So everybody's homegrown. And we have two different support systems that are meant to create and encourage the sense of the Atlantis family. And the idea is that we're all one and we support each other. So if you've lived in third world countries or if you visited there and you talk to people who own businesses there, there's a really cool thing that's called cash advance. What does this mean? It's basically, hey, I really need money today. Boss, can you please pay me ahead of time my salary that's due next week, for example. So anyone who studied economics, and I have a master in business focusing on international economics, would see that in third world countries, you've got these consumption graphs and they go up on the 15th and on the 30th. So every time people get paid, they run out and they buy a bunch of stuff. And then 2 days later, the money's gone. So there's no sense of financial planning. That's not just about the Philippines. It's a lot of third world countries. So one of the things Atlantis owners wanted to prevent was this point of view where people are not thinking ahead about their finances. So we created a staff governed loan system. What that means is that the staff actually can opt in to be part of this bank, right? And it's governed by the staff. So each resort, there are 6 people and they are the committee that's in charge of all the money that's being collected by the opting in of the staff, which is 1% of their salary. And once you've opted in, what you can do is apply. You can apply for a loan. It's obviously 0 interest. It's against your future pay, but you also need to specify in what installments you're going to do that. So it does require a sense of financial planning, and it can be for anything, but it does require the sense of financial planning and kind of thinking ahead and planning ahead for the things that you want to purchase, and just the ability of putting something down that shows that you're thinking of those options to come. So that's one thing. And then the second one is obviously an endless medical fund that both our owners have established and are helping with medical procedures for staff that they can't afford. So that's happened a few times, unfortunately, in the last few years and in general. But that's a really good thing to be able to show folks that this is a family, because you think about it, you've got your nuclear family, right? Your partner and your children or your parents or whatever it is. But most of the day you're spending with your coworkers. Maybe not today as you're working from home, but you understand what I mean. It is a family. And I am very proud to be part of that family. If you think about it, other than all the do good and smiley faces, as you can see here of Genie here in the middle, he's 53. He's the oldest dive master in Dumaguete entirely. An amazing, amazing guy. Doesn't want to be an instructor. He only wants to dive. He's very known for his ability to spot incredibly small critters. But then the 2 guys here on the left and the right are folks that were boat boys and are now instructors. So Junar and Alfred have been with Atlantis for over 10 years. So when you start looking at this and you go, oh, there's a business case behind too, obviously you get a higher retention rate, which means people stay with you. And happy staff means happy guests. I was just talking now with a lot of other operators in the Philippines, and people are telling us how hard it is to get the staff back after they've been closed for 2 years or they've been partially operative. We've been so lucky. I think over 95% of the folks are back. Everybody's back and very, very excited to be back. So that says a lot about the Atlantis family. Now, beyond our little family in the resorts and on the Liveaboard, we've got the general community in which we operate. So the idea is to be able to have a trickle effect into what's around you. So in partnership with our guests, actually, we manage a feeding program in 6 different schools. There are 3 in Dumaguete and 3 in Puerto Galere, the 2 locations where we operate. The guests are actually, it's 2 guests in particular that they started this fund and they are raising money for it, and we do everything on the ground. And we have an education foundation. You can read about it on our website. I'm sure this presentation will be available to you through VDive. But mostly it's about building knowledge, and building knowledge is what will change the future of the oceans in third world countries, because people are set in their old ways, and the new ways are the ones that are going to do good in the long run. And of course, we know this because, 30, 40 years ago, 60% of the Philippines, if not more, was all dynamite fished. So, and look at how far we've come in such a short time and how quickly the reefs recovered. So the ocean has a tendency to recover itself. Nature does in a way. So the idea is for us to just be able to explain very, very, very small things like fish life cycle. Why shouldn't you fish a fish that's too small? Why should you leave protected zones and let the fish population rejuvenate? So all these ideas, how do we protect what we love by building knowledge in the local communities where we operate? So we've got a youth program that's really, really cool. It's combining both youth from private schools and public schools in the regions where we operate to introduce youth to the ecosystem, to the ocean ecosystem, through swimming, diving, and exploration sessions. So for example, like in Paddy Women Dive Day, we take 10 young ladies diving every year, 10 in Puerto Galere, 10 in Dumaguete. And for most of them, it's just the first time ever being in the water and poking their head in. If that's not life-changing, what is? And during the pandemic, we started thinking about different things that we could do because we all had a lot of time. What we can do to even greaterly support the environment and the community. And we came up with 2 awesome projects that are happening this year, and we are hopeful it will be annual events. We've got a coral restoration project or event, a coral rescue event this September, the end of this September. We have the largest NGO in this field, which is the Coral Restoration Foundation from the Florida Keys. They are the ones who are setting up the trees that you can see here in the presentation, in the photos. And they are operating almost everywhere in the US. They have over 70 sites in the Florida Keys. They've been there for over 10 years, and they're replanting fragments of staghorn corals, which you can collect from the reef that's been broken by storms or by human activity or whatnot. And you put them on these trees, and then you clean them, but then they grow really, really fast because of the water filtration, especially in tropical and subtropical areas. So we are setting up a nursery like that this September. We're super stoked about that. We've invited our guests to join us. We have the Coral Restoration Foundation coming from the States. We have our local Filipino partner, the Mead Foundation, and the Loveland Living Aquarium Foundation from Utah, the States as well. And all of these guys are going to be with us for a week, and every night there'll be a series of lectures. Every night there'll be a topic about just coral restoration, how we restore corals, why we should restore corals, and all that good stuff. And the key thing to remember, even if you're missing this, the idea is every guest that comes to Atlantis after September, end of September 2022, for a week of diving or a few days of diving, can choose to devote one of their dives to clean a tree. We have set up training materials so that anyone who comes, can come and help this effort. And this is how we build long-lasting, sustainable projects, is by getting everyone involved, right? The public sector, the NGOs, the private sector, and of course, you guys, the divers. In addition to that, we've teamed up with a really cool NGO from the UK, a shark researcher who spent 8 years in the Philippines researching sharks. He's going to be leading a trip on board our Atlantis Azores Liveaboard, going to Malapascua, of course, but also to southern Leyte to see the whale sharks in the wild and not in Oslo. So if that's of interest to you, you should get in touch with your VDive staff. So this is us, 2 resorts and a liveaboard. We have one resort in Puerto Galere, which is in the island of Mindoro. It's in the north of the Philippines. The main advantages of it is that it's really, really close to Manila, like 3 to 4 hours away. So if you know Anilao, it's just across the Verde Passage. Different than Anilao, it's got crazy vivid reefs and deep walls and really nice rock formation, like big boulders and swim-throughs and canyons and holes that you go through and open up to the big blue. It is a very, very diverse dive destination. It even has one wreck and great macro. And obviously the key thing to Atlantis, where we are located, is that we are 30 seconds to 5 minutes by speedboat from over 30 dive sites, which is huge, especially if you're seasick. Our second resort is in Dumaguete in Dauin, which is fairly known for its macro. It's black volcanic coarse sand. So it's a lot of macro, but then we do day trips to Apple Island, the longest lasting community-led marine reserve in the Philippines with massive table corals, and of course to Oslo to snorkel with the whale sharks. So we've got a little bit of not only small stuff, but we are seeing some wide angle and big animals. We've got artificial reefs there, anything from cars, toilets, big fish cages, whatever you throw in that sand just gets overgrown, and amazing, amazing, amazing land tours. I've lived there for almost 5 years. It's got waterfalls and hot springs and crater lakes and really beautiful hiking trails, everything that you would dream of and more. And our Lord Atlantis Azores, a 32-meter long private yacht. It takes 16 divers, 1-6 in 8 different cabins, 2 groups of 8. It does various itineraries a year. It does Tubataha, which is an incredible destination that I know this government still says you're not supposed to go to because it's in the Sulu Sea. However, it is pretty safe. I've been there once and going again next year. Southern Visayas, so kind of like a Bohol area, and around Cebu itinerary, anywhere from 7 to 10 nights. Those are the itinerary that we do. That's it. That's it. I promised I wouldn't speak fast, but I spoke really fast. We're waiting for you more than ever after 2 years of not operating. It's time to get back to Southeast Asia. It's time to get back to the Filipino people, and it's time to get back in the water. So we hope you do that soon. Thank you very much. If we've got any questions, I'm really happy to take them.
Vielen Dank. Thank you, Roni, for your presentation. Ihr könnt jetzt gerne noch mehr Fragen in den Chat hineinschreiben, wenn ihr möchtet. Ich werde mal die ersten Fragen, die gekommen sind, vorlesen. So, Roni, the first question is if there are house reefs at the resorts.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, in Puerto Galere, literally one of the dive sites is right in front. People say, why do we get on a boat? We could just swim there. So yes, there are house reefs in both resorts. If you go to our website, which is atlantishotel.com, atlantishotel.com, you will find under scuba diving, there are 3 menus: scuba diving Puerto Galere, scuba diving Dumaguete. And under each of those, there is a map with all the dive sites. And in Dumaguete, in Dauin, one of the most famous reefs is called Atlantis Reef, because that's our house reef, literally right in front.
Okay, great. Another question was coming regarding the entry regulations in COVID entry regulations. What means fully vaccinated? Is it 2 vaccinations or
yes,
the booster as well?
No, 2. It's only 2. It's only 2. At the moment, it's 2, and it doesn't have an expiration date like you do in Europe, where it says, oh, 2 in the last 6 months or something like that. No, it's just 2.
Okay, great. Then another question was, in which resort is the coral rescue event?
It's in Dumaguete. Oh my God, I'm sorry I didn't say that. Yes, it's in Dumaguete. We will do it in Dumaguete this year, and we are very hopeful to do it in Puerto Galere next year.
Okay, great. And the Azores, is the ship cruising from resort to resort, or where is the, how do you say, the start and the end point?
It depends on the itinerary. So to Bataha, we start and end in Puerto Princesa in Palawan, which is the nearest port, obviously. And then that happens from late February until middle of June. So it's about roughly 16 weeks. After that, we move the boat to the Visayas, and then it's there from June to the end of the year. And it leaves from our Atlantis Dauin Resort, which is super easy. If you want to get off the boat and do a couple of nights in the resort or vice versa, there's 0 transfers. You literally get off the boat in the morning, have breakfast in the resort, and go to your room and keep diving. So there's seamless transfer. So yes, it does. It leaves from our Dumaguete Resort. We do have an itinerary that leads from Puerto Galere. I haven't touched upon it at all because we do it every other year, and the next time it's available like 2026. So,
okay. That's far away.
yeah, we've just left it out. Yeah.
So the next question is, Patty, open water diver with 50 dives okay to dive?
Oh, totally. Diving in the Philippines is so easy. We are a resort that follows regulations. I will say that. It's funny because literally just before this Zoom was part of a very big discussion of people getting angry that they're being required to dive to their certification limits. We do make sure that you dive to your certification limits. So even if you're PADI open water, you will dive to 18 meters and not more than that. If you're advanced, you'll dive to 30. So yeah, but there is so much to see. There is so much to see, even at 18 and below. There are a lot of reefs that are shallow. There are a lot of slopes, and actually come to the Philippines and do your advanced. That's more appropriate than anything.
Okay, great. There are two more questions about the entry regulations. So one is, there is no test, nothing. They don't need any test, no PCR test, no antigen test, nothing.
Before you depart, yes, but not when you enter the country. So it's 48 hours before departure, you need to do a PCR test. In Switzerland, before you go to the Philippines.
Yes, and on spot, there is nothing.
No, nothing on the spot, and nothing upon departure unless Switzerland requires it, which I think it doesn't anymore.
Okay, and the other one is about the insurance, how they check the insurance.
They want you to show the policy. So it's
so you
literally
need the policy in English.
It doesn't even have to be in English.
Okay, so they just, you need to show like a paper.
You just go on the phone and you show on the phone, and then you'll have, it does need to be on a letterhead of the insurance company or whatnot. But a lot of times, look, when I travel, I obviously do not only medical insurance, I also do travel insurance because it's just silly not to do it these days. And it's not very expensive. And so you get a policy in the email, right? And it says medical coverage. It just says that in the email. Doesn't even have to be the big policy, but it says it in the email. So that's enough to show to get in. Yeah.
Okay, great. And another question is about the diving. If there are nitrox 15-liter tanks available.
Of course. We actually don't charge you anything for 15-liter tanks. All you have to do is just reserve. Just say ahead of time that you need a big tank and you got it. That's not a problem. We have both nitrox and air. Nitrox has a surcharge and air is included. So most of our nitrox divers dive nitrox with 5 dives a day. Like I said, yeah, it could be 15-liter or 12. We actually also have the 80s, the 60s, the smaller ones. So some of the smaller females prefer to dive on that.
Okay, great. And what about the transfers? So if you're flying to Manila, you have the domestic flight to Dumaguete, and to from Manila you have the car transfer, right? And the boat transfer to the resort.
To Puerto Galere, correct.
How long does the transfer take?
So for the flight from Manila to Dumaguete is about an hour and 10 minutes. And then the resort is about 40 minutes from the airport. So if let's say you land in Manila in the morning, and you should land in the morning to do same day transfers easily. So you have more options available to you. So it will be, to get to Dumaguete, you have to take your bags in Manila. Kind of, if you've ever been to the States, it's the same. You take your bags at the point of entry, and then you go through customs, and then you put them back on the carousel. So it would be around 3 hours overall from the moment you land in Manila on your international flight, and then you go to your domestic flights and And normally between 3 and 4 hours you'll be in the resort. And that's exactly the same time for Puerto Galere as well, because we drive from Manila to Batangas. That's about 2 hours. And from there, we take a boat that's about an hour. to Puerto Galere. So anywhere is 3 to 4 hours from the moment you land in your international arrival.
And the transfers are all organized, so it's easy for the clients.
Yes, we do everything from the moment you arrive in Manila, and of course VDive does everything else. So between the two of us, you're super covered.
Great. And then one more question. What did the employees do during the COVID when the resort was closed? Did they had other jobs or?
So what we did when this whole thing started, obviously nobody knew what was going to happen. And we were one of the, I have to say, really lucky in that sense, because our owners kind of looked at it and said, ooh, we need to get everybody out. You know, some resorts didn't do that and end up getting stuck with guests for like 2 months, you know, when there's lockdowns and people can get to work and all that stuff. So we've evacuated everybody kind of towards the end of March, which is when the Philippines closed. We didn't really know what was going to happen. So what we did is we sent people home with a month and a half worth of salary just to figure, you know, to see. And then of course, after a month and a half, nothing happened. We did 3 fundraising throughout the last 2 years where the owners matched every dollar or Swiss franc or euro donated by our guests. So they matched it out of their pocket, and that actually took people on a 1 to 2 months pay. And then we fired the security company, and our staff worked as security guards at the resorts. So it wasn't a full time, absolutely not. But we had rotations of a week on, a week off, and at least it was something for people to get by in addition to the fundraisings that we did. Like I said, we've received everybody back. Unfortunately, we've lost 2 staff, but not to COVID. But yeah, we've received everybody back, and everybody's managed to get through this, you know, on the working as a security guard. Some people took other jobs, like our cruise director worked at a dive center completely on a different island. So everybody did what they could, but it's amazing to see that everybody's back home, back in the family.
Yeah, that's great. So the next question is if a guest wants to rent a car or a motorbike, if there is an international ID, if they need the international ID for it, or how does it work?
I think generally, so there are car rental agencies, and mostly the car rentals do require a driver's license. I've never had to, it needs to be in English, or it needs to have some English writing. Most of the Western countries' driver's license is now recognized as an international driver's license. I know mine is, and I know there are other people who have it, like German driver's license is definitely accepted and recognized in the Philippines. So I would assume the Swiss would be as well. For motorbikes, to be honest, there's a lot of people renting them and no one's going to ask you for a driver's license. We always encourage our guests to be safe, but there is an option to rent those. I don't think anyone is going to ask you for anything. The car rental agencies do. They're a bit more organized, but with the motorbikes, it's a little bit less than that.
Okay, great. So this was the last question. If anybody has another one, please.
Wear a helmet. Please wear a helmet.
Otherwise, I say now in German, falls es ist noch Fragen habt, ihr könnt uns auch jederzeit noch ein E-Mail machen oder auch anrufen, das ist kein Problem. Wir sind jederzeit für euch da. Ich könnt gerne jetzt noch Fragen in den Chat schreiben. Ich übergebe das Wort noch an Sandra zurück. Sie wird noch 1, 2 Infos geben.
Ja, ich hoffe, ihr hört mich jetzt ein bisschen besser. Yeah, so Ronnie, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting. Yay. Ich hoffe, ihr habt auch so spannend und inspirierend gefunden wie ich und dass wir euch bald in das super tolle Land schicken dürfen. Ja, wenn keine Fragen mehr rum sind, habe ich immer noch ein paar Infos für die Seite. Und zwar findet ihr die Informationen über die geöffneten und bereisbaren Destinationen nach wie vor bei uns auf der Webseite. Glücklicherweise hat sich die Situation ja in der vergangenen Woche verbessert und wir freuen uns auf konkrete Anfragen von euch. Nach wie vor sind wir in der Kurzarbeit und bearbeiten natürlich trotzdem alles so schnell wie möglich. Falls es doch noch ein bisschen länger dauert, bitten wir um Verständnis. Telefonisch sind wir vom Montag bis Freitag vom 9 bis um 12 und vom 1:30 bis um 4 erreichbar. Und sonst könnt ihr uns natürlich auch gerne ein E-Mail schicken. Die nächste Präsentation findet voraussichtlich am Dienstag, am 12. April, am Abend am 8. statt. Über welche Destination und Produkte ist noch offen. Wir hoffen aber natürlich, dass es weitere Destinationen aus Südostasien wird sein. Ja, wir würden uns freuen, wenn auch ihr wieder mit dabei seid und wünschen euch jetzt noch ganz schönen Abend. Danke für eure Aufmerksamkeit und das Interesse. Und ja, tschüss miteinander. Hoffentlich bis bald.
Yeah, I put there our website. There's a lot of information there, especially about the dive sites. You can go and explore that, and also our YouTube channel, so you can see some movies and have an idea of what it looks like there. So really, thank you so much for joining. We do look forward to seeing you in the Philippines soon. So keep dreaming and let's go diving.
Bye together.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.